There's a town hidden in the hills where the wind never blows, the clocks don't tick, and the people are waiting for someone to stay. I should have kept driving. Welcome to Gallows Hill, the town where time stands still. Part 1. The Turnoff, the map. The wheels of Eli Mercer's old Honda hummed against cracked asphalt, carrying him deeper into the Appalachian backroads than he'd ever intended to go. The last road sign he passed had been rusted, nearly illegible. It didn't matter. He wasn't going anywhere in particular. The truth was, Eli wasn't running to something. He was running from everything. A divorce finalized 6 weeks ago. A house now belonging to someone else. A job he'd quit before they could fire him. There was no destination plugged into his GPS. Just a vague direction. West. Anywhere but where he'd been. The sun had begun to fall behind the ridgelines, turning the sky to gold. Eli glanced at the GPS on his dash. The screen jittered, then blinked out. A moment later, it returned. The route replaced with a red line that spiraled off the highway down a narrow road marked Gallows Trail. He hadn't seen the turn, but now it was behind him. The voice on the GPS whispering, recalculating. A thin mist crept across the road, then thickened. Eli slowed to a crawl. The trees on either side grew denser, gnarled branches arcing over the road like the ribs of some sleeping beast. He rounded a bend and slammed on the brakes. A wooden sign loomed out of the fog, hand-carved and painted with a fading coat of white. Beneath, the words was a painted illustration of a smiling sun over rolling hills, almost cheerful if not for the name. Gallows Hill. It sounded like the kind of place you passed through not to. Still, the fog was too thick to turn back now, and Eli was too tired to care. The road led into what looked like a preserved town center, like something lifted from a 1950s postcard. An old barbershop with its striped pole still intact. A diner with dusty stools at the counter. A bookstore with hand-painted window lettering. Not a soul in sight. Eli rolled down his window. Silence. No wind. Not even a rustle of leaves. The air was thick but still, unsettlingly still. He parked near a gas station with a single old-style pump out front. The bell above the door jingled as he stepped inside, startling him. Behind the counter, an elderly man in a plaid shirt smiled. The kind of smile that stretched too wide, like it had been practiced for a long time. "Evening," the man said. "Just passing through?" "Yeah," Eli said. "Had a detour. GPS brought me here." The man nodded, unfazed. "It does that sometimes." Eli forced a laugh. "Hell of a fog." The man didn't laugh. "The wind'll come back when it's ready." Eli blinked. "Sorry?" "The wind," the man repeated. "It always comes back. You just gotta wait." Then he looked past Eli toward the windows and said nothing more. A little creeped out, Eli left the gas station and drove down the street a bit, stopping at a roadside inn called the Hollow Pine. A woman in her late 50s sat behind the check-in counter, flipping through a ledger. Her name tag said Marnie. She barely looked up as Eli approached. "Room?" "Yeah, just for the night." She nodded and slid over a key attached to a wooden fob shaped like a pine cone. "You'll be in room 3. Eli hesitated. "So, this place always this quiet?" Marnie glanced up at him, then past him to something outside the window. "The town rests when the wind's away, keeps things still." He paused. "That a local saying?" She didn't answer, just handed him the key and muttered, "You'll want to sleep before dark." That night, Eli threw his duffel on the bed, sat for a while and stared at the wall. Everything felt muffled, like the whole town existed under a glass dome. No sound outside. No cars, no wind, no life. He stepped out front with a cigarette and leaned against the railing. He lit it and took a drag. Then he noticed something wrong. The smoke didn't rise. It just hung there, curling around his fingers, like thread suspended in glue. No breeze, not even a pull. Eli stared, heart ticking up. He flicked the cigarette, but even the ash fell. slowly, as if the air itself resisted motion. Somewhere behind him, a door creaked. When he turned, no one was there, but he could have sworn, just before it closed, he saw Marnie peeking out from behind it, staring upward at the sky. Part 2. Polite people. The morning light in Gallows Hill looked wrong. It wasn't the color, it was the way it didn't move. No shadows shifted, no leaves stirred. The air remained deathly still, like a photograph pretending to be a town. Eli stood outside the Hollow Pine Inn, watching a paperboy set down a stack of newspapers in front of the general store. The boy never looked at him, just placed the papers down, turned, and walked away in a straight line like he was being pulled on invisible strings. Eli wandered the main street, hoping daylight might make the place seem less wrong. But if anything, the strangeness was starker in the sun. The town looked perfect, too perfect. Every storefront freshly painted, every sidewalk swept. But nothing moved. The American flag in front of the town hall hung limp, motionless, not even a twitch. He passed the bakery. The bell above the door jingled, the first sound he'd heard all morning. Inside, a plump woman in a floral apron smiled so broadly it looked painful. "Well, good morning, stranger," she beamed. "You've come on a fine day." Eli nodded, glancing around. The shelves were stacked with perfectly round loaves. None of them smelled like bread. "You just passing through, I reckon?" she asked, her head tilting slightly to the side like a doll's. "Trying to," Eli said, unsure what else to say. "The wind'll guide you when it's time," she said, her voice soft but flat. Then she didn't move, just stood there smiling as if someone had hit pause. Eli slowly backed out of the shop. Outside, the same elderly man from the gas station was sweeping the sidewalk in front of the barbershop, or rather, moving a broom across concrete with no leaves or dust. The motion looked performative. "Morning," Eli offered, trying to make conversation. The man looked up with the same plastered smile. "Bright as a new penny today. Time for a trim?" Eli looked at the empty barbershop behind him. "Not today." The man's smile didn't fade. He just kept sweeping and sweeping. Further down the street, on a wraparound porch, an old woman sat in a rocking chair knitting. The chair rocked, but her body didn't move with it. Her arms moved fluidly, repeating a pattern that didn't seem to produce anything. The yarn didn't shrink. The scarf didn't grow. Eli looked down at his watch. The second hand wasn't moving. He tapped it. Still nothing. He ducked into the diner for coffee, hoping, praying, for something normal. The bell rang as he entered, and for a moment he thought things might be okay. The smell of eggs and bacon drifted through the air, and the sound of a spatula clacking against a pan echoed from the kitchen. But the customers inside didn't move. They sat stiffly at booths, holding empty mugs or newspapers that had no text. Just white pages with headlines printed in large black font. "The wind is still." A waitress approached, her smile identical to the others. Her name tag said, "Lila." "Table for one?" she chirped, already leading him to a booth. Eli followed uneasily. As he slid into the booth, he glanced at the photos lining the wall, black and white pictures of the diner from decades ago. The waitstaff posed in everyone, a different era. The 20s, the 40s, the 50s, he froze. In the center of a 1957 photo stood a man in a paper hat and white apron. Eli stared at the face. It was him. Not similar, not a coincidence. Him. His heart thumped. A plate of toast and eggs appeared in front of him. Lila was gone. He hadn't even seen her bring it. A voice startled him. "You shouldn't be looking at the pictures." Eli turned. A teenage boy leaned against the kitchen door frame. Acne, greasy hair, maybe 16. He wore a white apron too, though it hung loose on his thin frame. "I'm just passing through," Eli said, trying to sound casual. The boy frowned. "They all say that." "Who?" "People who come here. You're not the first." Eli leaned in. "What is this place?" The boy glanced toward the kitchen, then back at Eli. "You'll hear the house hum," he whispered. "Then it's too late." Eli blinked. "The house?" The boy started to say something else, but Lila appeared beside him, resting a hand on his shoulder. "Back to the grill, Marcus." The boy went silent, turned and walked away without another word. Eli left the food untouched. That night, back in room 3 of the Hollow Pine, the power went out just after sunset. But it wasn't just the inn. It was everything. The street lamps didn't glow, no porch lights across town, no lit windows, no moon, no stars, just nothing. The darkness outside the motel window was absolute, as if the town had been swallowed. Eli sat on the edge of the bed, straining to hear something. Anything. And then it came. A soft scratching. Behind the wall. Too slow to be mice. Too deliberate. Long, dragging sounds, and like fingernails over drywall. He held his breath. Whispers followed. They came through the floor vents. Dozens of voices, murmuring, overlapping, unintelligible, except for one phrase. "You're almost still." Eli stood, heart hammering, and crossed the room. He placed his hand on the vent, expecting heat or cold, but it was dry, neutral, unmoving. The whispering continued, and then it stopped, just as suddenly as it started. The silence returned, and somewhere outside, beneath the black sky of Gallows Hill, a door slowly creaked open. Part 3. The still house alley was already packed before the sun came up. The motel room felt smaller than it had the night before. The walls warped inward as if leaning toward him. He hadn't slept. The whispers hadn't returned, but the silence was worse. It had a weight to it, a pressure. He threw his bag into the passenger seat and drove fast, past the diner, the empty barber shop, the statue in the square of some long-forgotten mayor holding a wind vane. His hands gripped the wheel. As the fog thickened ahead, he followed the road out of town, past the last of the houses and into the woods beyond. The GPS flickered. No map, just a spinning arrow. 15 minutes, 30, an hour, and then the trees opened, and he saw it. The sign, "Welcome to Gallows Hill, where time stands still." He slammed the brakes. The car skidded to a stop. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." He turned around, drove faster. Another hour, another try. Same sign, same loop. His phone refused to shut off now. The screen stayed lit, no matter how long he held the power button. It wasn't frozen, just stuck. He watched it flicker between the home screen and a camera preview that kept showing his own face, even when the camera was pointed away. By mid-morning, Eli was back on Main Street, rage dulling into dread. He walked without direction until he came across a rust-colored mailbox marked Greeley. The house behind it was old, colonial, ivy-wrapped, leaning slightly to one side like it had exhaled and never inhaled again. He didn't knock. He just stood outside staring at the curtains. They moved, and then the door opened with a soft creak. An elderly woman stood in the frame. She wore a shawl over a faded dress and held a china teacup in one hand. Her eyes were glassy but clear. "You look like a man who hasn't had answers or rest," she said. "Come in before the air catches your name." Eli hesitated, then stepped inside. The house was a museum of dust and silence. Dozens of clocks lined every shelf, wall, and mantel, none of them ticking. Some with cracked glass faces, others with curled labels below them, names written in neat cursive. "Marlene, Jacob, Tobias, family?" he asked. Miss Greeley smiled faintly. "Reminders." They moved into a sitting room. A tray of untouched tea sat on a doily-covered table, 2 chairs facing each other. He sat down cautiously. She handed him a cup. He didn't drink. She did. "The bomb, stillness," she said, her voice calm and quiet. "Arrived when I was a child. Long before your time. It came from the mountain. Or perhaps beneath it." Eli watched her, unmoving. No one invited it, but no one turned it away either. That's how it always begins. It offered peace in exchange for something very small. She gestured around the room. We accepted, and the wind stopped. Eli's voice was dry. What did it take? She held up one pale, shaking finger. Motion. Not just of air or branch or blood. Motion of soul. And now, every breath you take here. She leaned forward, eyes wide. It takes one of its own. Eli swallowed hard. Then why do you stay? I've stayed long enough to forget what movement used to feel like. My bones are quiet now. But you're still warm. He stood abruptly. Miss Greeley didn't flinch. One more thing, she said. The wind. If you hear it return, run. That means it's hungry again. Eli fled the house without saying goodbye. By the time he returned to the motel, the sky had begun to gray. Not cloudy, just less. Less light. Less depth. The world had become flatter, like it was giving up on the illusion of being real. Inside his room, something felt different. The floorboard near the bed creaked under his step, once, then twice. He dropped to his knees and pried it up. Beneath the board, nestled in dust and old nails, was a leather journal. Connor's journal. The first few pages were neat. Log entries, observations, names of streets and townspeople, descriptions of the same looping roads, same diner, same photograph. Then things shifted. The handwriting grew erratic. Words scratched into paper like they were carved, not written. I've counted the clocks, and 37, all stopped the same second. I saw a woman blinking in reverse. The reflection isn't mine anymore. Near the end, the entries became sentences without structure, half-thoughts, repetitions. The stillness is watching the back of your eyes. Don't move. It likes when you move. The final entry ended mid-sentence. I heard my name in the... That was it. Eli slowly closed the journal. Every hair on his arm was standing straight. He turned toward the mirror above the dresser. For a moment, he saw only his reflection. Then, not quite in sync, it smiled. He did not. The grin widened until the face looked stretched, unfamiliar. Wrong. And then it stopped. Perfectly still. Just like everything else in Gallows Hill. Part 4, when they start watching. Ellie hadn't opened the curtain since finding the journal. The motel room now stank of stale air and sweat. He hadn't left since sunset. The clocks, the whispers, the mirror, it all pressed on him like a weight just behind his ribs. But now, as morning broke into a pale gray light, he forced himself up and out. He needed answers. He needed out. He stepped outside and headed into town. Main Street was too quiet. There were no sounds of engines, footsteps, birds, just the soft, ever-present hum of stillness, the kind you don't notice until everything else is gone. He marched toward the diner, but it was empty. No cook. No waitress, no smell of grease or coffee. Across the street, an old man stood on his porch, still, eyes fixed on Eli. Eli raised a hand in frustration. Hey, I want to talk to someone. What is this place? No answer. Another window opened, behind the man. A girl in a white dress stepped into view, her head tilted slightly, eyes unblinking. A third, an older woman peering between lace curtains. Soon, every window on the street had a figure, watching, not moving. Eli turned in a slow circle. There were dozens of them now, across porches, through shop doors, behind picket fences. He took a step toward them. They froze, expressionless, completely, motionless. He took another step, eyes fixed on a boy with curly hair standing behind a flower cart. The boy didn't blink, didn't breathe. But when Eli turned, just slightly, just enough to look away, he heard the cart's wheel creak. He spun back. The boy was closer. It had moved. Eli stepped back, a chill flooding his chest. He tested it, turned his back to the man on the porch. A moment later, a scraping sound. Turned again. The man was now at the bottom of the steps. They only move when I'm not looking, Eli muttered, horror building in his throat. By dusk, Eli was back at the motel, pacing. He nailed boards across the windows using furniture legs and coat hooks. His hands trembled, every curtain drawn tight. The journal lay open on the bed, the final entries now making a twisted kind of sense. The town isn't alive. Its skin stretched over a thought. It reacts, adapts, mirrors what you bring. You're the one keeping us breathing now. Eli reread that last line a dozen times. His breath hitched. It was him. His presence here, his attention, was what sustained the town. The people, the illusion. If he had never turned off the main road, would any of this still exist? From outside, the boards rattled softly. He froze. Then, nothing. Silence. Until, tap, tap, tap. Not at the window. At the wall. From inside. He turned. A shadow shifted just beneath the bathroom door. No, he whispered, backing away. Suddenly, a new phrase began to appear in the journal. The ink wet, like it had just been written. The wind has chosen. He dropped the book. The lights went out. Everything fell into a black so total it felt thick, like something poured over the world. And then in the darkness, Eli began to see, not with his eyes, with something deeper. He saw an image. No, a dream. A massive, unmoving shape buried beneath the town. Limbs like twisted roots curled through bedrock. A face like a fossil half submerged in stone, with a mouth that didn't open and yet still spoke. Not in words, but absence. The thing waited. It wasn't asleep, it was holding its breath, and Eli was its first inhale in years. He woke gasping. Cold. The room was no longer empty. They were there. Every resident of Gallows Hill. Inside his motel room. Standing in a perfect circle around his bed. No door had opened. No sound had warned him. They just stood shoulder to shoulder, blocking every wall, every corner, whispering. One phrase over and over again. The wind has chosen. Eli tried to sit up. None of them moved, just stared. One reached out slowly as if guided by strings, touched his chest. Another touched his forehead. Their whispers grew softer. The wind has chosen you. And then, nothing. No sound, no movement. Eli closed his eyes. He didn't know if he was breathing anymore. Part 5. The wind that watches Eli ran through the fog, through the morning light that seemed stuck in an eternal gray dawn. His legs ached, his lungs burned, but he didn't stop. The motel door had been open when he woke. Every trace of the townspeople gone, like they'd never been there at all, but they had, and something deeper had watched through their eyes. He didn't head for the road. It always looped him back. Instead, he sprinted into the woods behind the gas station. Trees swallowed him whole within minutes, but they weren't right. He ran for 20 minutes, maybe more, and passed the same knotted elm 5 times. Its bark was peeled in a spiral like something had twisted it open. Every tree was the same height, the same shade of rot-colored brown. No wind, not even here, no birdsong. The forest was dead still, until he found the playground. It rose like a wound in the trees. Rusted metal equipment, half sunk into the dirt. A crooked swing, a tunnel slide covered in mildew. A sandbox where nothing grew. And in the center, a merry-go-round, spinning. Slowly, without wind, without touch. Eli approached it, cautious, the yaw, metallic creak of its movement louder than it should be in the silence. There was a child sitting cross-legged nearby, pale, barefoot, unblinking. Eli crouched near them, unsure if they were even real. Before he could speak, the child picked up a stick and began to draw in the soft earth, a circle, houses, a hill, and then an eye, huge, open, watching, hovering above the town like a god. Below it, a face, his face. Before he could ask, the child pointed. Through a narrow path behind the trees, Eli followed. The trail led to ruins, old stone eaten by ivy, a chapel, half collapsed, its steeple snapped like a bone. Moss clung to the windows, the door torn off its hinges. Inside, carvings stretched from floor to ceiling, all of them eyes, watching from every surface, some weeping, some open and blank, all inhuman. At the back, an altar, 3 words, carved, deep into the stone. The wind watches, the wind waits, the wind takes. Eli's breath came shallow. It wasn't just a town haunted by stillness. It was a place of worship, but not of God, of the wind, or whatever wore that name. He turned to leave. The forest let him go this time. The sun hadn't moved. The light hadn't changed, but the people had. Back in town, they were no longer hiding behind curtains or pretending. They stood in the open, in the streets, on porches, in doorways, all facing him, every one of them mouthing his name. No sound, just lips forming Eli again and again and again. Their heads turned in perfect sync as he moved past them. Faces blank, eyes wide, unblinking. And then he noticed something far worse. His shadow. It lagged behind him, twitched when he didn't, glitched, like a puppet pulling against its strings. It raised an arm before he did, turned its head at a different angle, smiled when he hadn't. Eli ran. There was nowhere left to hide, nowhere left to reason. He needed to do something real, something loud. The bell tower. It had stood above the town since the beginning. He hadn't noticed it until now, like it had only come into view when the town decided he should see it. He pushed open the rusted iron gate, climbed the crumbling steps 2 at a time. The tower groaned as he ascended, cobwebs thick as blankets. Stained glass windows long since dusted over with ash and time. At the top, the bell, huge, blackened with age. Eli stared up at it. A rope hung down from its yoke, frayed and stiff. He wrapped his hands around it and pulled. Nothing. Again. Stillness. Then a snap. The rope gave way with a shriek of strained metal, and the bell moved. Just a little. He pulled again, harder, with everything he had, and then clang. A sound like thunder cracked across the sky. The bell tolled. Once, and the air changed. For the first time in Gallows Hill, the wind blew, not hard, not cold, but present. Leaves rustled in the streets. Dust blew across the sidewalks. The flag outside the post office shifted for the first time in memory. Eli stood in the tower, hands still on the rope, panting. And far below, the people of the town began to look up, their mouths closed, their heads tilted, and something else, something far away but approaching, seemed to turn its gaze toward him. Part 6. The smile in the wind. The wind came back, but it didn't carry life. It carried something else. It howled through Gallows Hill like it had been caged too long, a scream in motion. It didn't ruffle hair or cool the skin. It touched. It searched. Eli stood in the bell tower as the air around him grew thick. The wind wasn't air anymore. It was presence. It whispered through the beams, curled around his shoulders, spoke in a dozen voices just under hearing. Names, please, warnings. Don't breathe. Don't smile. Don't remember. He descended the tower as the town below unraveled. The change was sudden, violent. Buildings aged in seconds, wood splintering, bricks cracking and sinking into soft earth, paint peeled in sheets. Signs rusted, then fell apart altogether. The people changed too. Those polite, smiling townsfolk, they shuddered, froze mid-step, and then crumbled, one by one, like leaves left too long in the sun. Their skin flaked away, smiles disintegrated. Beneath them were faces with no eyes, just blank flesh where expression should be. Still smiling, always smiling. The sky swirled unnaturally above, clouds spinning faster than nature allowed. The fog had returned too, this time swirling, inward, not creeping out. The town was closing in. Eli stumbled through Main Street. Time felt wrong, like the world was breathing backward. A shattered bottle reassembled as he passed. A broken clock ticked backward, hands jerking violently. Turned down an alley and stopped cold. A mirror, full length, standing against the wall. It reflected, not him, but someone else. Connor. Or was it? The figure wore Eli's face now, dressed like the innkeeper had been. Calm, still, smiling. Eli reached into his coat pocket, without knowing why. A piece of paper. He unfolded it with trembling hands. The journal page. The final one. His own handwriting stared back at him. To leave, you must forget. To stay, you must smile. His hands began to shake. He hadn't written this, had he? The wind coiled tighter, laughing in the rafters and gutters. Something was collapsing, not just the town. Him, Eli, ran. The streets bent around him. A wrong turn brought him back to the clock tower. Another turn and he passed the same diner 3 times. Inside, the cook stood facing the wall, muttering the same phrase over and over. "It's almost your turn." The bell rang again. Not by his hand. It tolled on its own. Eli fell to his knees. His shadow, which had been twitching and jerking behind him all day, finally caught up and merged. The last thing he saw before the world went black was the town's wooden sign. It was new, freshly painted. "Welcome to Gallows Hill, where time stands still." And beneath it, in delicate gold script, a new addition. Innkeeper, E. Mercer, fade to fog. A car engine hums in the distance. A young woman drives down a lonely Appalachian road, eyes squinting at the sudden white mist that blankets the world. Her GPS blinks out. The road bends, sharp and wrong, and she finds herself facing a weathered wooden sign at a fork. "Welcome to Gallows Hill, where time stands still." She frowns unsure, but a gentle breeze nudges the mist aside, and there, on the roadside, is a quaint little inn. Warm light spills from its windows. A man stands out front, dressed in simple clothes, smiling, calm, still. Eli Mercer, but his eyes never move. They remain fixed, unblinking. His mouth opens in a practiced greeting. "Welcome, miss. We're so glad you made it." And the wind begins to whisper again. You thought Gallows Hill was a town lost to time, but time itself never left. It's still waiting. Every road leads back, and the wind, it's never gone for long. If you find yourself in a place where nothing moves, where even your shadow stands still, remember? Some towns don't need to be found. They'll find you first. Stay safe and keep watching. Something else is always watching too.